As COP26 approaches, it is essential for all humanity that we fulfill the promise of the Paris Agreement. That means reducing emissions by half by 2030 and achieving net zero emissions by mid-century so we can limit temperature rise to 1.5 degrees from pre-industrial levels. We are not yet there. Despite some recent encouraging announcements, I remain especially concerned over the lack of progress on public climate finance. Let us be very clear. $100 billion a year from public and private sources for mitigation and adaptation for the developing world is the bare minimum. Much more will be needed. And development banks have an essential role to play. We need you to spearhead the transition of energy systems from fossil fuels to renewables, while also ensuring universal access to energy. There are no other institutions better placed than development banks to fund adaptation needs. If multilateral, regional and other public development banks do not lead on this front, no one will.
The United States is a large shareholder in the multilateral development banks, and we're committed to using our position of leadership to help facilitate a global transition toward net zero emissions by mid-century.
To consider how to do this and how to catalyze the trillions of dollars needed for transition, I convened a group of international CEOs to help develop a terra carta, a practical blueprint for practical action. The result identifies three key priorities. First, encouragement to governments to send clear market signals about long-term economic direction and the timelines involved to incentivize the achievement of climate, biodiversity, and just transition targets.
It's precisely to address climate and development. Let's keep this in mind. The World Bank has its mission to reduce poverty, and we have made great progress. But climate change could undo some of this progress. In the worst case event, we could see an increase in extreme poverty throughout this decade by about 130 million people.
Yes, we're heading to Glasgow, and we're heading to Glasgow with a very bold promise and objective to be reached. The first one is that we want to reduce by 51% all our greenhouse emissions by 2030. And we've also set the goal that we want to reach carbon neutrality by 2050. Those are the two major goals. So yes, we're talking about carbon neutrality, but something that is also important, David, is that we're talking about nature positive policies. Carbon neutral, nature positive policies. And by that, we have set the goal of zero deforestation by 2030, and something that is more important, which is to reach the 30 by 30 compromise of having 30% of the Colombian land or territory to be protected area.